I was finally coming home for Christmas after years of military service, but just days before my dad sent a message saying I wasn't welcome anymore. I simply replied fine. He didn't even call me. After everything, after the deployments, the ambushes, the years I spent carrying a rifle through deserts where the temperature hit 120 degrees, after watching soldiers I considered family get zipped into body bags, I opened my phone to find one text from my father. "Don't bother coming this Christmas. We've decided it's best if you stay away this year. No, how are you holding up? No, we've been thinking about you." Just a message that read like a termination letter from the people who were supposed to love me no matter what. My name is Amara Collins, and from wherever you're watching this, I need you to stay with me. Have you ever crawled through hell just to make it home, only to find your own family has deadbolted the door? The army taught me how to compartmentalize emotions, how to push down fear and keep moving forward. But I swear that text hit me harder than the IED blast that left shrapnel in my left shoulder. My mother didn't reach out. My younger brother Caleb stayed silent. It was as if they'd all signed some invisible contract to exile me right before the holidays. I sat there in my cramped studio apartment in Clarkston, staring at the twinkling Christmas lights I'd strung up across my window 2 days earlier, wondering what I'd done to earn this kind of coldness. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I typed one word back, fine. And I meant it. Not in that way you say fine when you're hurting and secretly hoping someone will press you for the truth. No, this was the final kind of fine, the you'll never get another chance to wound me like this kind. I closed my laptop, deleted the Southwest Airlines confirmation I'd purchased 3 weeks prior, and poured myself a generous glass of Merlot. I raised the glass to the empty room. To family, I whispered bitterly. 5 days later, I woke up to 12 missed calls. 2 from Caleb, 3 from Dad, 6 from my mom, and 1 from their attorney. That last one made my pulse stutter, because by then, it was already too late to undo what I'd set in motion. Too late to unsay the words they'd hurled at me. Too late to tear up the certified letter I'd already mailed to their address in Millbrook. They thought I'd come crawling back like I always had, loyal, forgiving, desperate for even the smallest crumb of affection. But this time, I wasn't the naive girl who'd left home at 18 with a duffel bag and a head full of dreams. I'd returned wearing a different kind of armor, the kind you can't see but runs deeper than Kevlar. And they were about to learn just how dangerous a daughter becomes when she finally stops begging for her father's approval. Let me take you back, before the silence, before that text message, before the betrayal that would change everything. I was 18 when I enlisted in the United States Army. My father didn't embrace me at my high school graduation ceremony. He just looked at me with those tired, critical eyes and said, "Try not to screw this up like everything else." That was his version of affection, harsh words disguised as tough love. But I didn't join the military to make him proud. I joined because I needed to prove to myself that I was worth something, that I mattered. Because home had never felt safe, not with the way he looked at me, like I was some burden he'd never asked to carry. When I made staff sergeant at 24, I flew home to Millbrook that December, hoping for some flicker of acknowledgement. Instead, Dad met me at the door and asked me to shovel the driveway before I'd even taken off my combat boots. "No, congratulations on your promotion. No, we're so proud of what you've accomplished. Just grab the snow shovel, it's by the garage." My mother? She was a shadow of the woman I desperately needed her to be. Always wringing her hands in the background, always whispering the same phrase, "Just don't upset your father, Amara. Please." My brother Caleb had learned early that siding with Dad meant peace, so he followed in his footsteps like an obedient apprentice, never questioning, never defending me. Still, I played the role of the dutiful soldier daughter. I called on every birthday. I sent flowers on their anniversary. When the furnace died or the transmission went out on their Ford Explorer, I wired money from whatever dusty outpost I was stationed at. They never asked where that money came from or what it cost me to earn it. They just deposited the checks and sometimes, sent back a thumbs-up emoji. Often, not even that. But every single year, I hoped. I hoped for one Christmas where I'd walk through that front door and feel like I belonged, one holiday where my seat at the dinner table wasn't just an obligation but a genuine welcome. This year though, this year was supposed to be different. I'd finally completed my service. I had my honorable discharge papers, a modest military pension, and a heart that was tired of fighting wars both overseas and at home. I wanted to come back to Millbrook, bake snickerdoodles with Mom, hear about Caleb's new job at the insurance company, maybe, just maybe, get a simple well done from Dad. Instead, I got that text. So I set my plan in motion. Because 5 years ago, during one of my brief leaves, Dad had asked me to co-sign something for the house, a second mortgage refinance. I was barely 24 years old at the time, exhausted from back-to-back deployments. He called it just a formality, a technicality to help with the interest rate. I was young, desperate for any sign that he valued me, so I signed those papers without reading them thoroughly. Big mistake. For them, at least. Because now I owned 51% of their house on Oak Ridge Drive. They had no idea yet. But they would. Very, very soon. The truth is, I'd completely forgotten about that mortgage co-signing. It wasn't until after Dad's message detonated something cold and sharp inside my chest that I went digging through old emails looking for a distraction, anything to keep my mind occupied. And there it was, buried in my military Gmail archives, a digital copy of the co-signing agreement, marked as executed, signed by both him and me, notarized, witnessed, completely legal. I clicked through the document again, this time reading every line with the careful attention I'd once given to mission briefings. And there, hidden in the dense legal language on page 4, I found it. In the event of primary borrower default or voluntary transfer of management, the co-signer assumes controlling interest over the property until full loan maturity or sale. Controlling interest. I had to read it 3 times before it fully registered. While he'd been so busy pushing me out of the family, he'd forgotten that on paper, I wasn't just his daughter. I was his co-owner. Actually, scratch that, I was the majority owner. He'd needed my signature for that refinance 5 years ago because of his damaged credit score and mounting debt. I'd signed those papers in my dress uniform, thinking it meant I finally mattered to him, that he trusted me. Now it meant I owned the one thing he'd always bragged about at neighborhood barbecues, the house. The same house he'd just told me I wasn't welcome in anymore. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. That night, I called an attorney, a sharp real estate lawyer named Gerald Hughes whom I'd met during a legal assistance seminar at Fort Campbell. Hypothetically speaking, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, what happens if a co-signer holds majority interest in a property and the primary borrower tells her she's not welcome there anymore? There was a pause on the line, then a low chuckle. Well, hypothetically? That borrower just made the biggest mistake of his life. If she wants to exercise her rights and take control of that property, she absolutely can. The law is crystal clear on this. I didn't tell my family anything. Not a word. Instead, I drafted a letter, not a dramatic, emotional one, but something cold and professional, the kind of communication I'd learned to write in the military. It read, effective immediately, I will be exercising my controlling interest as legal co-signer and majority owner of the property located at 847 Oak Ridge Drive, Millbrook, Georgia. All legal rights and responsibilities will be enacted through counsel. You will be contacted shortly regarding next steps. I sent it certified mail, old school and deliberate. Let them open it together at the kitchen table. Let them pass it around with trembling hands. Let them feel it. Then I booked myself a quiet cabin for Christmas week in the Blue Ridge Mountains, snow falling gently through the pines, a wood-burning stove crackling in the corner, and my phone switched completely off. 5 days later, I powered it back on. 12 missed calls. 1 voicemail from an attorney. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Not out of revenge, out of clarity. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone's permission to come home. I was home. They were just living in a house that legally belonged to me. Caleb called first, his voice shaking with confusion and anger. Amara, what the hell is this? Dad's losing his mind. He's talking about lawyers and eviction and lawsuits. What are you trying to do to us? I took a slow sip of my coffee and gazed out at the snow-covered mountains through the cabin window. My voice came out calm, almost eerily so. I'm executing my legal rights, Caleb. Same way Dad executed his decision to tell me I wasn't welcome home for Christmas. You're seriously going to kick them out? Over one stupid text message?
No, Caleb.
I'm not kicking anyone out. Yet. I let that word hang in the frozen air between us. He sputtered, searching for words. Come on, Amara. This is Dad we're talking about. You know how he is. He didn't mean it like that. Yes, I do know how he is. That's exactly why I'm doing this. Because here's what I'd learned in the military: sometimes the people who hurt you the most never expect you to fight back. They rely on your silence, your need for their approval, your willingness to settle for scraps. But I didn't need scraps anymore. I had a legally binding contract. And for the first time in my entire life, I had power. The next call came from their attorney, a man named Harold Pemberton. He tried to sound casual, but I could hear the barely concealed panic beneath his professional tone. "Ms. Collins, I'm certain there's been some sort of misunderstanding here. Your letter arrived rather abruptly, and it's understandably caused quite a bit of alarm for your family." I cut him off mid-sentence. "There's no misunderstanding, Mr. Pemberton. The documents are valid and legally binding. I have the original copies. I've reviewed every clause with my own counsel. I am now invoking my controlling interest in the property." A beat of heavy silence. Then, "Well, I'm sure we can work something out. Perhaps a buyout agreement, or a reassignment of the mortgage note." That's when it clicked into place. They were terrified because Dad had defaulted on the mortgage again. He'd missed multiple payments, probably assumed the bank would work with him like they had before. But now he wasn't facing down a faceless corporation, he was facing me. I leaned back in the worn leather armchair and said quietly, "I'm open to discussion, Mr. Pemberton. But my first condition is non-negotiable." He calls me himself. "Not through you, not through Caleb, not through Mom. I want him to pick up the phone and ask me directly." Harold Pemberton fell completely silent. He understood exactly what I was doing. This wasn't really about the house or the mortgage or property rights. It was about acknowledgement. About forcing him to see me as a human being worthy of basic respect. I ended the call and looked around the peaceful cabin. There was no Christmas tree decorated with family ornaments, no stockings hung by the fireplace, no smell of honey-glazed ham or pumpkin pie. But it was peaceful, genuinely, deeply peaceful. And that peace? I'd earned it with scars and sacrifice and years of being invisible. They didn't know it yet, but I was done being the soldier daughter they could ignore when convenient and exploit when they needed money. Now I was the landlord. And Christmas back home on Oak Ridge Drive was about to become very, very uncomfortable. Christmas morning arrived cold and sharp. I woke to another call, this time from my mother. "Amara," she whispered, her voice trembling like thin ice about to crack. "Please don't do this to us. Your father hasn't slept in days. Caleb won't even come out of his room. Can't we just move past all this?" Move past it? I almost laughed out loud. "Mom," I said softly, carefully, "do you remember what Dad texted me?" She went completely silent. I continued, my voice steady. "He told me not to come home for Christmas. Not this year, not ever. He said I wasn't welcome anymore. Do you have any idea what that does to someone who's been deployed overseas for nearly a decade? Someone who sent money from combat zones, who never missed a birthday call or anniversary card, who nearly died multiple times defending this country." Still nothing but silence on the other end. "I was in Kandahar on my 25th birthday," I said, my throat tightening with old memories. "We got ambushed on Route Dover. 3 soldiers in my unit didn't make it home. I called you that night after we made it back to base, covered in dust and blood that wasn't mine. Do you remember what you said to me?" I don't remember," she whispered. "You said, 'Well, thank God you're safe, sweetheart, but maybe don't talk about those things around your father. It makes him anxious.'" I let that sink in. That's when I realized the truth you all danced around for years. I was never really your daughter. I was just an inconvenience you tolerated when I stayed quiet and sent checks. Mom sobbed then, raw, helpless sobs that might have broken my heart a year ago. She begged me to reconsider, to have mercy, to remember all the good times we'd shared as a family. But I didn't cave. Not this time. Because what she didn't know was that I'd already filed the legal paperwork, a formal notice of possession change. It was scheduled for delivery to 847 Oak Ridge Drive that very afternoon. And the final touch? I'd hired a property management company run by a veteran friend of mine from Fort Benning to handle all operations. They would arrive the following day for an official inspection, not to evict anyone immediately, but to make it absolutely clear that this wasn't their home anymore. It was mine. That afternoon, I sat by the stone fireplace wrapped in a thick wool blanket, watching orange flames dance and crackle. No wrapped presents, No family gathered around singing carols, but there was something better: peace, justice, and for the first time in my life, control. I hadn't blown up their world out of petty revenge. I'd simply reminded them whose name was on the deed. And this year, for once, Christmas belonged to me. The property manager, a tough-as-nails woman named Sergeant First Class, Ret. Monica Graves, called me around 4 in the afternoon. "Hey Amara. We completed the walkthrough. Your folks weren't exactly thrilled to see us, but we kept everything professional and civil, just like you requested." "How bad is the property?" I asked. She exhaled slowly. "Cosmetically? Not terrible. But structurally? We've got water damage in the basement, an unfinished attic renovation that's been abandoned mid-project, mold growing under the windowsills in 2 rooms. And here's the kicker: 2 of the 3 upstairs bedrooms have tenants living in them. College kids, looks like. Subletting arrangements, probably cash deals with no paper trail." I froze, my coffee mug halfway to my lips. "They rented out rooms in my house?" "Sure looks that way. No formal lease agreements that we could find." That was it, the final piece of confirmation I needed. They hadn't just cut me out of the family emotionally. They turned my own legal property into an under-the-table income stream behind my back, all while texting me that I wasn't welcome there. My stomach turned, not from anger but from the sheer insult of it all. They'd used my name and credit to secure the house, filled it with strangers for profit, and then told me I didn't belong. That night, I drafted a second letter. This one wasn't polite or measured. It was a legal hammer. Effective January 2nd, you are hereby given formal 30-day notice of management transition and possible termination of residency. Your sublease agreements are unauthorized and therefore invalid. All rent collection is immediately suspended. This property is now under formal investigation for code violations and potential fraud. Direct all future communications through legal counsel only. I signed it with my full name and rank: Amara J. Collins, Staff Sergeant, United States Army, retired. Legal co-owner, 847, Oak Ridge Drive, Millbrook, Georgia. I sent the document directly to Harold Pemberton. Then I texted Caleb just 3 words: "Check your mailbox." Within the hour, my phone exploded. Voicemails, frantic texts, even a call from my father, the first time he tried to reach me directly in over 2 years. I didn't listen to a single message. I didn't read a single text. Because there's a moment every soldier knows intimately, that split second when your boots hit solid ground after a firefight and you realize you survived. In that silence, you feel a power that's impossible to describe. That's exactly what I felt now. They could scream. They could cry. They could beg and threaten and manipulate. But I had survived them. And now they were living in my house, under my rules, on my terms. Come January, they were going to learn exactly what it felt like to be unwelcome. Not out of pettiness or cruelty, but because I no longer needed a seat at their table. I owned the whole damn dining room. January 2nd arrived like a slap of frozen air. The sky hung heavy and gray over Millbrook, Georgia, and the driveway of 847, Oak Ridge Drive was crowded with 3 vehicles, 2 of which I didn't recognize. I didn't show up alone. I arrived with Monica Graves, a professional locksmith named Dennis, and a thick folder of legal documentation tucked under my arm. I wore a dark wool coat, polished black boots, and my army dog tags hanging visible around my neck. I wasn't there for a screaming match. I was there for an inspection. For closure. For the ending I'd earned. Dad yanked open the front door before I even reached the porch steps, his face red and sweating despite the 30-degree temperature. "Amara, what the hell is this circus?" he snapped. I didn't respond right away. I simply walked past him, my shoulder brushing his as I crossed the threshold. "My house, my rules," I said evenly. Mom appeared at the base of the staircase, clutching a rosary she only ever pulled out when she wanted to look pious. Caleb sat slumped on the sofa, pale and defeated. He couldn't even meet my eyes. I took a deep breath and addressed the room. This is a legal transition of ownership and management. As of this morning, all rights associated with this property fall under my direct control. You have 30 days to make a decision, formalize your tenancy under a contract I provide, or relocate to another residence. Dad exploded. Relocate? You can't do this. This is our home. I built this place with my own 2 hands. No, I said coldly, meeting his furious gaze without flinching. You defaulted on it. And you signed it over to a 24-year-old soldier in uniform, just so you could save face with the bank and keep your credit from tanking completely. That shut him up instantly. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I looked around slowly, at the living room where I used to sneak downstairs on Christmas morning as a little girl, at the mantel where my boot camp graduation photo used to sit. It was gone now, replaced with pictures of Caleb's college friends and Dad's golf buddies. Just empty space where I'd been erased. The unauthorized tenants upstairs have already been notified, I continued. If they're not out within 10 days, I'll file trespassing charges. And if anyone, I looked directly at my father, attempts to intimidate, damage property, or interfere with this process in any way, I will pursue criminal charges to the fullest extent of the law. Mom's lips trembled. Tears began streaming down her face. But where will we go, Amara? Where are we supposed to go? I looked her dead in the eyes, this woman who'd stood by silently while Dad tore me down year after year, who'd chosen his comfort over my dignity every single time. I don't know, Mom. Maybe you'll figure it out. After all, that's what you told me to do when I was 18 and terrified and leaving for basic training. You said, you'll figure it out, honey. You always do. She burst into sobs, collapsing onto the bottom step. Caleb finally stood up, his voice cracking. Amara, I know we messed up. I know Dad was wrong. But this is too far. You're destroying our family. I raised one hand, stopping him mid-sentence. I don't need your words now, Caleb. I needed them 10 years ago. I needed them every time Dad belittled me, every time Mom made excuses, every time you stayed silent to keep the peace. Now I just need boundaries. The locksmith stepped forward and began changing the electronic code on the front door as I turned and walked out. Snow crunched beneath my boots. The January air smelled clean and sharp, like a fresh start. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like somebody's disappointing daughter. I felt like a woman who'd come home stronger than anyone expected. They could call it cold. They could call it cruel. I called it survival. The final notice expired on January 31st at 11:59 p.m. They didn't fight it in court. There were no last-minute phone calls, no dramatic standoffs on the front lawn. Just silence, the kind that settles in when people finally understand you're not bluffing, you're not going to back down, and you've stopped caring whether they approve of your choices. I arrived at 847 Oak Ridge Drive on the morning of February 1st with a new key in my hand, the metallic weight of it strangely comforting. The house was empty. Completely, utterly empty. No note left on the kitchen counter, no goodbye message, just a hollow echo as I stepped through the front door, the same door where I'd once stood in my dress uniform, praying someone would tell me they were proud. Instead, I'd been met with exile. I walked through the room slowly, deliberately, taking inventory of what remained. In Caleb's old bedroom, I found a forgotten duffel bag tag from some ski trip to Colorado I'd never been invited to. In the living room, there was a deep scratch carved across the hardwood floor where the coffee table used to sit, the same table I'd bought at 19 with my first deployment paycheck, the one they'd later claimed as their own and never acknowledged. I stared at that scar in the wood for a long time, not with anger, but with a strange awareness of how deep damage can run when nobody sees you bleeding. I didn't cry. There were no tears left for them. Instead, I walked to the back door, opened it wide, and let the cold February wind rush through the empty house. I stood there with winter sunlight warming my face, and I finally understood, this wasn't revenge. Not really. It was restoration, of boundaries, of dignity, of self-worth, of a name they'd tried to erase from the family story. 3 months later, I transformed 847 Oak Ridge Drive into something that mattered, transitional housing for female veterans. Young women with stories like mine, stories of deployment, return, rejection, and the long, painful journey to reclaim who we are beyond the uniform, beyond the service, beyond other people's expectations. We named it the Collins House. And when local reporters came asking questions after the Millbrook Gazette ran a feature titled Veteran Reclaims Home, transforms it into haven for women who served, I didn't give them the full story. I didn't shame my family publicly or air every grievance. Because this wasn't about revenge or making them pay. This was about healing myself and helping others heal too. So when people ask me, was it worth it? Was all that pain and conflict and severed relationships worth it? I smile and say, more than you'll ever understand. I don't visit my parents. They don't call me. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they moved to a rental townhouse across town and that Dad finally retired from his job at the hardware distribution center. Caleb sent one email months later, just 2 sentences. I think I understand now why you did what you did. I'm sorry I wasn't braver. I never replied. Some apologies come too late to change anything, but at least he finally saw the truth. Every Christmas now, I light a candle on the front porch of the Collins house, not for them but for me. For the girl who once stood outside in the snow feeling unwanted and invisible. She finally found her way back home. And she made absolutely sure that no woman like her would ever have to stand alone in the cold again, wondering if she was worthy of love. The house is full now. Laughter echoes through rooms that once held only silence and judgment. 6 women live here at any given time, veterans rebuilding their lives, finding their footing, healing from wounds both visible and invisible. We eat dinner together. We share stories. We hold each other up on the hard days. And every single one of them knows they're welcome here. Always. That's what home was supposed to be all along. And I built it myself, from the ashes of the family that rejected me. Some people might call that cold or calculated or unforgiving. I call it survival. I call it strength. I call it finally coming home.